I know Kung Fu. Show me. I'm Liam, this is Rob, and joining us this week on the Hey You Guys podcast is Dave Alder as we look back at the movie that stole the summer of 1999 from right under the nose of George Lucas and The Phantom Menace. Arguably the most astonishing sleeper hit of all time, the visually groundbreaking, technically spectacular The Matrix has not only aged wonderfully, but somehow still looks better than most modern movies, including its most recent sequel. Now, I know how I feel about The Matrix. I fear for how Rob feels about The Matrix, but Dave, you asked specifically to be on The Matrix podcast. And well, I assume it's because you at least like it.
No, I hate it. It's awful.
Oh, fair enough. Shit.
No, of course not. I think The Matrix, for me, was the first film I saw in the cinema that genuinely left me gobsmacked. That when I came out, I couldn't believe how good a film that was. Not necessarily, I mean, the story's great, I think, but it's not a groundbreaker. But visually, it was just spectacular, and like you said, it still holds up today.
Yeah, really. And I think it's hard to describe to people what it was like in 1999 going and see this movie, because for a lot of people, again, there was very limited buzz. All the oxygen in the room, so to speak, had been sucked up by The Phantom Menace. Everyone was looking forward to seeing that, and of course, that ended up disappointing many people. But then The Matrix just felt like it came out of nowhere, almost like in the slipstream of The Phantom Menace. And people were just like, it was based largely on word of mouth. And it's easy to forget that in 1999, most people didn't have the internet. Or if they did, they weren't looking at fucking movie news. So people were just going in to see like, well, what the hell's The Matrix? That amazing marketing campaign, what is The Matrix? And then it ends up like kind of like the Blair Witch Project, this kind of mix of hearsay, and some people have got the internet and you're hearing different things about it. But all you know is that it has these groundbreaking visuals. But I still don't think it prepared you for what happened on screen. Because for me, it was like the two parts to it. The reveal. I always think of the part where Neo suddenly wakes up in the goo, and I was like, what the fuck is going on? But of course, from a purely visual perspective, you've got to talk about the bullet time sequence, which to my mind might be the most groundbreaking visual sequence of my lifetime. I can't remember anything having even a remotely similar impact.
Didn't they steal that from Blade?
No, they didn't.
You know what? all the way through this film, after doing the Blade podcast, I kept thinking, oh yeah, Blade did that. Oh, Blade did that. Like when they were running down the corridor and they're blowing bits of the walls off, you think this looks very much like the Blade going into the building. It's a different league, though, isn't it? I mean, the bullet time still looks amazing. And I think it's a bizarre thing, because this was another one of those films that was a victim of its own success for a long time, where it was so culturally impactful that it got sent up a million times. So it almost became a joke because of its own success. And I kind of throw it in the same category as, say, Austin Powers or Borat, two equally brilliant films that just everyone was doing impressions, and it just almost became a joke. But because it became a joke and bullet time became so synonymous with this movie, I don't feel like, I almost feel like it was an evolutionary dead end, visually anyway, and that nobody else kind of beat it. Like there was nothing to come out. There's no other film where you're like, oh, well, it did bullet time better than The Matrix. It absolutely didn't. Bullet time is good, don't get me wrong, but I wouldn't say that's the best visual part of the film. I thought that was, at the time, wow, that's amazing. Yeah. Looking at it yesterday, that's probably the one special effect I thought looked a little bit dated. The best part for me is the helicopter hitting the building, and 100%. The way the building ripples, it still looks amazing.
I put that down as one of the best explosions in cinema. Like there's something about, I mean, that whole scene is amazing. So you have like the emotional impact of everything going on between Neo, Carrie-Anne Moss, and that all comes back to that chemistry as well. But there is something about the way that helicopter hits, the building ripples, and then on top of that, you get Carrie-Anne Moss smashing into the window on the other side, and you feel that impact as well. But that's all part of, and we'll get to it in a minute, a 40-minute masterclass in action cinema, which basically closes up this film. I'm a little concerned that Rob's been very quiet this film.
Well, no, I mean, I've been waiting for you to both go, because like I was about to say, right, this podcast's been going on for about, 5, 6, 7 minutes, and I've said 6 words. Didn't they steal that from Blade? I liked it. I liked it better than... I've only ever seen this film twice. And I liked it better than the first time I saw it. Now, I didn't see it in the cinema, so I didn't come out going, oh my God, that's the best thing I'll ever blow. But...
What? The best thing I'll ever blow. That
You
is
two
one of
are
the
blowing
strangest sentences.
blowing the fuck out of this film, and I'm still trying to figure out.
You're saying that like it's a weird thing. I think if you looked at any list of the top 25, 50 sci-fi movies, not of this millennium, literally of all time, I'm guessing The Matrix will be in the top 5 of all.
And I'm not disagreeing with that. But then again, this is coming from me, who, as a huge sci-fi fan, again, really don't like the main 2 sci-fi properties, Star Wars or Star Trek. So, but I'm not trying to shit on this film. I did like it. There were things I did like about it. The start of this, what do you call it, 40-minute action set piece, I do want to get to in great detail, because the start of that set piece is terrible. But we'll get to that. No, the rest of it, it's fine. But the start of it, and we will get to my thoughts on that. But the story, I know you, Dave, you're saying that the story is a bit meh, but I kind of like that thing, because you do sometimes, I don't know if it's just me, I might be high, you look at the clouds and you think, is that just a fucking like oil painting? Our actual clouds in real life. So we could be in the Matrix. I like that.
Are you having an existential crisis?
I really think that I'm just
there's most people
somewhere right now, but
this happened to most people in 1999. I'm amazed that he didn't watch Avatar and go, God, I wish I was living on Pandora.
In Here You Guys Bingo, who had Liam for an avatar.
It's never long.
I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed, and I'm surprised you like this film, because this has full on Keanu Reeves at this hokiness. Like,
we'll get to that.
Oh, okay.
Oh, we will get to that. But
I do like. I like Keanu Reeves in this film. The one person I didn't like in this film was Carrie-Anne Moss.
Ooh,
I don't know.
Shots fired.
He didn't feel right for me in this.
I love her in this film.
I mean, in her wiped down trousers, I mean, she is hot.
I wrote that down. Isn't it uncomfortable in all that leather?
I don't know how she manages to get a leg that high in those trousers.
Yeah, she is, to me, the quintessential handsome woman. And that is not a criticism, but she is a handsome woman, no doubt about it. But I think she's great in this. And again, a lot of it comes back to Keanu, because he has a very unique intonation. Maybe not quite as unique as Hugo Weaving in this film, which kind of makes Agent Smith in many
He sounds like Walter Cronkite, doesn't he? Like an old 50s. Like he's doing that kind of,
Oh, yeah. Well, he almost sounds like a computer talking, doesn't he?
Yeah.
I think he's fantastic in this. And I think that the core 4 performances in this film are all fantastic. But the one thing that makes the movie really tick is, and again, people love, people hate Keanu kind of thing. You get a very distinct acting style. But one thing he does bring to the screen so often is chemistry with other actors. Yeah. So he has chemistry with Fishburne, he has chemistry with Weaving, he has chemistry with Moss. And it's like you think back to like Speed, as great as Sandra Bullock was, she has amazing chemistry with Keanu and the same with Patrick Swayze in Point Break. He does seem to bring out this kind of...
Are you calling him a chemistry sponge?
Yeah, a little bit. He seems to bring out the best in other actors. And, every scene where you think, and this speaks across like the whole trilogy, obviously, but his chemistry with Hugo Weaving is essential to the whole trilogy. And the same, the Lawrence Fishburne thing, that's led on to the John Wick series. And I mean, the Carrie-Anne Moss thing, you can say what you like, and like you said, some of his acting's hokey, some of the writing is hokey, but somehow they kind of pull it off, because I personally, when I watch them on screen, I absolutely believe that they're head over heels in love with each other, which I think is essential to the whole trilogy.
The reason he brings so much out of other actors is because next to him, everyone looks like a great actor. I mean, in this film, I think he is the perfect person for it, because he just looks confused all of the time. No matter that's his default. He is basically Ted from Bill and Ted in every film he's ever been in. So he's either angry Ted, really happy Ted, or Ted with a gun in his hand. That's just
contract killer Ted.
All you were expecting to see when those guns come down, you just expect him to go, whoa.
He does this film.
He does say whoa. He says it like twice, yeah.
Does it?
Like when he does the jump program.
Yeah.
And Lawrence Fishburne jumps across and he literally goes, whoa. And I was like, how self-referential is that? He must be aware. And there's, the bit when he's showing him the real world for the first time.
Yeah.
And suddenly he's surrounded by darkness and stuff. The way he reacts is full on Ted from Bill and Ted. Like he's overacting, like his shoulders going all over the place. But I find it oddly charming. Like he seems to get away with it in the same way. And again, part of it's the chemistry, but part of it is that screen presence. And we've talked about it on another podcast, specifically when we talk about people like Arnold Schwarzenegger, who blatantly isn't a good actor. He's not a great actor by any stretch of the imagination. But what he does have is that intangible screen presence. And whenever you have Keanu on screen, whenever you might think of his acting style, he's oddly magnetic. It also helps that he is such a beautiful man. I rarely refer to men as beautiful, but dear God, he is a beautiful man.
He's a handsome man. Do you know the most unrealistic thing about this entire film? The fact that as soon as he gets unplugged from the Matrix and he wakes up, he didn't kick Joey Pants off the ship. Joey Pantalone, because as soon as you see that guy is evil. Like the way he laughs at you, that fucking devil goatee with the bald head, like
the necklace.
A video game, basically. You go, well, that motherfucker's going to turn on you all. Just get rid of him right now.
It's weird with Pantoliano because everyone forgets, like, he's on the poster. Yeah. You know, I talk about like the 4 big players in this film. Yeah, I always think, oh, well, Hugo Weaving because he's Agent Smith, but it became because he was so good. But yeah, he's the 4th billed actor in this film. And he is good, but he's so clearly the bad guy. It's ridiculous. He literally looks like the devil. And in fairness, when he does get his opportunity to cook, you know, when he thinks he's won, you know, like, don't get me wrong, he does have one scene stolen from him by a piece of steak, by maybe the greatest piece of food I've ever seen on screen. That steak, I was like, dear God, that might be the best looking piece of steak I've ever seen in my life. But the bit when he's, you know, he's got them all on the call and he's like basically unplugging everyone, which is a horrible way to die. Yeah. You know, when he kills APOC and Switch, and there's something about the way Switch is like, not like this. Not like this. I'm just like, oh, it's so hard.
I love how her body just goes limp.
It's one of those like low-key horrendous deaths in like a mainstream movie. It reminded me, in terms of just being horrendous, remember Paul Dano's death in Looper? Where all of a sudden he's getting bits of him chopped off because they're doing it like in the past and in the future. Suddenly his tongue disappears and then his hand disappears. It's just like a horrendous death scene in an otherwise kind of like cinema popcorn film, I suppose. And that's the same way I feel about this. But yeah, he is absolutely cooking for like 5 minutes before obviously he gets killed by one of, dare I say, the worst actors I have ever seen. I know we've talked about Keanu Reeves, but outside of the core, and we'll call it 5 because we'll throw Pantoliano in there as well. Nearly everyone else in this film stinks. Yeah, make no mistake, they all stink.
I want to say, can I just say as well? I'll take back. I just realised I'll take back what I said about Carrie-Anne Moss because her acting was perfect because she had to try and stay silent and still while he's riding her all over her. Like he jumps on her and he's riding her basically.
He's one step away from licking her, isn't he?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's such a great scene.
He jumped on him with a hard on. He had to.
But that's the thing with that scene. I'm just like, oh, it's so good. He's absolutely slaying. And then all of a sudden, Marcus Chong, and I hate to name names, but Tank is absolutely swinging for the fences in every sequence he is in this film. And I mean, we'll get to some of the other characters in this film who I really hate in the list of hates for this film. But I do feel like there is an odd drop off after the top 5 where everyone else is like, is this like friends and family acting in this film? But that's one of my few criticisms of the film, which I think is otherwise pretty spectacular, actually.
I know I got him in fact a little bit, but should we cover Tank quickly now? Because we mentioned
go for it.
The reason why he didn't show up in the other 2 films.
Because he's bad.
Well, that and the fact that I think it might have been before or after, he threatened the Wachowskis. He was actually ringing them up and threatening them because they only wanted to give him like $250,000 for both films, and he wanted that for each film. So he's ringing them up and threatening them and things like that. So he's being blacklisted. Right. So you'll see, right? Look on his IMDb. You've got The Matrix, 1999. Then right after that, 2005, The Crow, Wicked Prayer, starring Edward Furlong and David Boreanaz. Like,
oh no, that's like a classic. Yes. Dude, take the paycheck and fucking run, man. Yeah. I mean, that makes me feel a lot better about shitting on him because he wasn't worth $250,000. I thought he was bad, but like I said, there are a few issues. But getting back to what's good in this film, I was actually surprised going back to the start. And I do feel like this film is split up into 3 sections. Like the section 1 is like 40 minutes of proper noir world building. Section 2 is 45 minutes of like the real world reveal, the establishment of the core plot and relationship building and stuff. And then, as we've already mentioned, 40 minutes at the end where it's just almost pure action. For all the plot in this film, it's almost completely abandoned for the last 40 minutes. But in that opening sequence, I mean, this really does feel like the ultimate neo-noir in terms of visual design. I mean, it really leans into that whole noir aspect in the way that the sequels never really do. Like, this is all shadows, rain, and, I mean, how much lightning is there in the first 20 minutes? Like, nearly everything Morpheus says is followed by fucking lightning. But this film in particular, it really is a noir with sci-fi trappings. Whereas, like, I feel like the sequels are maybe sci-fi movies with noir trappings, if that kind of makes sense. But like I said, going back to it, I was like, I couldn't remember that it was so dramatically and knowingly noir kind of thing.
I was saying to Dave off pod, the one thing I did like about what they've done with the visuals and everything is the fact that when you're in the Matrix, it's the tint of green because you're looking through a computer screen.
Yeah.
And I love that. I think that's fantastic. But there's hardly any blue in the real world. So why is the real world in the Matrix have more tints of blue? Because in our real world, there's blue is a fake color. So
yeah, like with the sea and stuff like that, and the sky and all that nonsense.
It's not a natural color.
Well, it's an interesting choice, but what it does is
the sky isn't blue, is it? That's the tint.
I could go into the science of the sky actually being blue, and it's to do with the. Anyway, we're not going to go into light rays and stuff like that. But
no, it's not blue; it's green, and the Earth is flat.
Fantastic. But what it does, it gives the movie like a unique visual identity. As soon as the film starts, and you see that green with the writing, and the music, and that's another thing we'll get into maybe with like the legacy is like. Everyone remembers the music for this film, which had a huge cultural impact, but the score is just as important. As soon as you hear that opening sequence and you see I can't remember the production company, but you see it in green, you're like, well, this is the Matrix immediately. And it's something that they actually lost with the latest Matrix film, which again, we'll get to in Legacy. But the big issue, and I'm not sure, have you guys seen Matrix Resurrections, the latest one?
Yeah.
It's like that film has a lot of problems. I think for the first half is actually incredibly interesting because there's no other film like it. And, I don't think we'll ever see its like again. But the strangest thing is, in that film, they show you clips of this film while you watch it. You see the two films almost kind of side by side. And the thing that stands out is the fact that the original Matrix looks so much better than its 2021 counterpart. And I was trying to figure out, like, legitimately, I was like, there has to be a reason for this. And I think a big part of it is that whole digital filmmaking. The original is shot on 35 millimeters, and it makes it look inherently cinematic in a way that a lot of modern films, it's not just the Matrix Resurrections, it's a lot of the Disney films, for instance, all look surprisingly bland and forgettable. And like, this, I think Resurrections is shot on like red cinema cameras or something like that. But there are other reasons. Like there was I think Lana Wachowski had an ill-advised use of natural lighting for the latest film, and it takes away all that kind of in the same way. Is it 48 frames that they did for the last Lord of the Rings films, the Hobbits films? Like it gives everything a clarity.
You're looking at two blank faces right now. You know that, don't you?
Okay, well, for those films, if you go back and watch them, they use 48 frames per second, yeah. And what that meant is, in theory, it looks incredibly clear, the clearest picture you'll ever see. But what it does is it makes everything look like you're looking through a window. There's no cinematic barrier between the movie and you. So instead, you end up just looking at actors acting rather than a movie.
Can I ask?
Which the film brain often assists with.
48 frames per second. Is that quick? Is that
yes?
Okay.
Most films are 24 frames per second.
So why did those films drag like fuck? Why would they?
Yeah, that's one of the big issues.
Because there was twice as many frames in there than any.
Yeah, that's probably it. Well, that's like again, there are loads of issues with the Hobbit films. I literally could never get over how they looked from as soon as it started. It was kind of like the smoothing thing you get on modern TVs. That's what that does. It fills in the frames so that everything looks weirdly real. But
that's what you did on my TV, wasn't it? Like you come over and you argued on my TV.
I couldn't watch your TV. Every time it came around your house, it just felt. It just made me feel creepy. It's weird. I couldn't quite put my finger on it.
You get it in honestly,
slightly weird way it moved, and I just couldn't.
Yeah, you get it in hotel rooms, and honestly, I know we have different feelings about Tom Cruise, but Tom Cruise and I think it was Doug Liman, is that his name? they actually went and did like a public service announcement when they told people you've got to turn off this setting on modern TVs because it ruins movies. And I couldn't agree more. If you look at it, it's great for...
I got a new TV, I probably haven't turned it off. What's it called?
It's like motion smoothing or something like that. And it's fucking horrendous. And that's 48 frames per second basically does the same thing where it's like you said, it removes the cinematic barrier, but all it makes it look is like staged rather than fake, if that makes sense. So yeah, there's loads of issues, but it is, I stand by the fact that this film looks so much better than a lot of modern movies, including its sequel. And, you know, you can go back and you can pick the holes in the, Reloaded and Revolutions, but those are really good looking films as well. Like, you know, we're talking like 20 years later now.
Going back to the actual, like the Matrix, the characters, Mouse deserved to die, didn't he?
Oh my fucking God. I fucking hate I've never hated one thing in a movie I otherwise love more than Mouse. Like, if he slaps his lip one more fucking time, if I met him in the real world, I would just punch him in the face if he talked to me like that. I would just fucking punch him.
I've never hated something as much as I hate the sound of tasty wheat coming out of that guy's mouth. Like,
oh, dude, and it's not only that, tasty wheat in it. Like, stop fucking doing that. Honestly, every time I see him, I just want to fucking kill someone. I hate him that much.
That's what but he is going to hook you up with a red woman, you know? So.
I don't give a fuck. He's a dick. As much as... I mentioned the fact that the drop-off after the Claw 5 is bad. There's a drop-off, and then there's another cliff and a waterfall, and then there's Mouse. He is... And they do it in the other films. There's an annoying little turnip in the fucking second and third film as well. Not as bad as Mouse.
That kid in the real world, because he's a
prick. He's a prick as well.
What I hate about, like, the main thing I hated about Mouse more than Tasty Wheat in the ways is they give him the best looking guns.
Oh, the shotgun.
And then he doesn't get to do anything with them because as soon as he holds them up, and the way those cartridges are wrapped around the gun, and all of a sudden he just gets holes burning. I'm like, that's fucking awful.
And it was a shame because, again, it nods back to the noir roots of the visual design that he pulls out ostensibly 2 Tommy guns. Yeah. Because that's what they are. And it looks so cool. And you're like, you gave them to a Mouse. Don't get me wrong, I have no issue with someone going out, like, you know, with 2 Tommy guns. It's almost like a classic trope almost for someone to have 2 Tommy guns, go out, you know, shooting, so to speak. But he didn't hit anything. He didn't hit a fucking thing. And then he just dies. Again, further proof that he is...
I was surprised he managed to pick it up. That's when you know it's a computer program. He was able to pick these things up, because in real life, that guy ain't picking up fucking anything.
Yeah. Well, let's get back on track with something which is good. And I mentioned the fact that this is split into like 3 parts. So section 2, you know, you're getting all the plot and stuff like that. But one thing you do get is the I Know Kung Fu training sequence, which obviously I quoted at the start. Now, I find it bizarre that this isn't mentioned amongst the great training sequences. When we talk about great training sequences, we always mention the likes of Kickboxer, Kill Bill, Rocky, etc., etc. I legitimately think that his training sequence belongs in the same category. I think that whole section with him and Lawrence Fishburne is and leading right through to the jump program is amazing.
I kind of think you're wrong straight away, because it's not.
Didn't that sound like a full stop? I think you're wrong, and then just conversation ended.
It's not a training sequence. That's a sparring session. When you mentioned Kickboxer, you mentioned everything else. The training is them actually training, actually doing things that don't exist in real life, like doing the splits underwater and shit like that.
But do you think his training sequence was the loading of his
program? Training sequence is the program where he sat in the machine with his eyes twitching. Like, that's not
doing his cum face.
Yeah, that's not a very good training sequence. What you have is a fantastic sparring sequence.
Oh no, I think that
get it right.
I totally get what you mean, and I did think about this. Because I was like,
it's sparring.
He does get trained fundamentally by the programs, but the whole thing, and it's going to sound slightly douchey, but Fishburne is training him to go beyond that, and because that's the thing, he knows all these skills, but he doesn't know how to quote unquote move like an agent and stuff like that, and that's what he's trying to teach him. So I think it's still classed as a training sequence for sure. Like he can't do the jump. He has to teach him how to do the jump, and obviously he fails.
Yeah, that's a training sequence, but you started off with the martial arts sparring.
No, he's telling him, he literally tells him, is that air you're breathing? He's training like you don't need, he's training him in terms of like the rules of the computer world. Not Kung Fu, but he is training him on the rules of the Matrix and what he can achieve. So I still think...
He's matching his top right now. You will fucking agree with me. It is a training session.
No, I thought the exact same thing, honestly. I was like, is this a training sequence? because he's had all the training programs. I totally get where you're coming from.
I mean, I'll put this over, like, the training sequence in this, as he calls it, is better than anything you get from, like, the Karate Kid and things like that. So
yeah.
And montage from the 80s.
Yeah.
Right. Well, again, if you want to know how good it is in terms of something you can directly compare it to, and I don't mean to shut on this film, but Matrix Resurrections has a very similar training sequence. And do you know what it is? Gash. It's fucking gash. It just looks back. And again, you go back, why does this look so good? And a lot of it comes down to the fact that they changed the cinematographer. I think it was Bill Pope with the original ones, and they moved to John Toll. And the fight choreography, something happened. Like, instead of, it all went a little bit, remember Batman Begins? All the fight sequences, they were like really tightly cut up close, and you just never knew what the fuck was happening. That kind of happened with the latest film. Whereas you go back and watch these action sequences, they've all got room to breathe. The camera's pulled away, and they have faith in the actors to pull the moves off. And again, the fact that Keanu's actually doing 90% of the stuff, it makes a massive difference. It's one of the underrated skills of Keanu, is that he's an unbelievable athlete.
But that goes down to the fact that they gave him, was it 4 to 5 months of actual training, something like that?
Absolutely.
You don't really get anymore. And I will give Keanu, he took that on board. And any film he has to do with a fight sequence, that guy goes out and does the work for it.
Oh, 100%. I'm not sure if you've seen with John Wick, he invented a new way to unload clips. Like,
yeah,
to shoot, like the flick thing. And now they actually use it. And he was the one who fucking started it. And you see those videos of him, where, preparing for John Wick, where he's got the shotgun, changes, doing reloads and stuff. And like, this guy is fucking legit. He does, say what you will about his acting, but in terms of his combat skills, shooting, all that jazz, he's up there. He's like, like Tom Cruise to stunts. He doesn't do the stunts in the same way. But in terms of getting those fight sequences right, like, he may be unmatched in terms of, like, core Hollywood stars, I suppose.
When it comes to like the gun side of it, I'll put him up there, but I think somebody better than him is John Bernthal, especially from The Punisher. The way John Bernthal does the whole weapons thing in The Punisher is fucking so realistic, until he takes people out with like pickaxes and shit. But yeah.
Oh no, yeah. I mean, I'm not saying like definitively, but he's in that kind of rarefied air of like, if you want somebody doing their own fight sequences, like Keanu for a long time, and even now, I mean, Jesus Christ, he's what, like 56, 57? Other than his running has always been a bit weird. He's got a strange gait about him. Even in this film, what was he, like early 30s, mid 30s? The bit in the office when he's talking to Morpheus on that awesome banana phone, and he's telling him to like go to the other cubicle. There's something about the way he moves between the cubicle, which is somehow both athletic and clumsy. And I think that kind of sums up Keanu's kind of
I can feel Dave about to pop. Stop talking good about Keanu.
Like, no, I don't hate Keanu in this. I just hate him in everything else.
Yeah. Oh, actually, as well, talking about unrealistic, how the fuck Morpheus got those glasses to stay on his head?
Well, that was the thing. That was all the rage at the time. And we'll get to it in Legacy, man. I don't think any movie has had a bigger cultural impact in my lifetime than The Matrix. Like, none. There was like a 4 or 5 year period where it felt like it had such a massive impact on the music scene, on fashion, on pop culture.
All I saw, like the late 90s, early 2000s, were people walking around Cardiff in leather dusters.
Yeah. I had a leather duster. Yeah. Everyone had a fucking leather duster. Everyone had everybody wanted that style of sunglasses. It was like people like, obviously Marvel has had a huge cultural impact, but it's more like its impact on cinema. But I can't think of anything which has impacted culture so directly, where it had that like direct impact on fashion and music in the way that The Matrix did. Like, we've talked about films where, it's not as easy as saying, oh, that's an 80s movie or a 90s movie. I think we mentioned a bunch of times that the 80s as we know it really started around 83, 84. I think it was about 84 we settled on, and it ended around 88, basically. I wouldn't put this as a 90s movie or a 2000s movie. It's very much a millennial movie. It's like from 99 till 2003, this absolutely dominated popular culture. And as quickly as it rose to prominence, it suddenly disappeared. And it comes back to the fact that it became the butt of jokes because it was so popular. So it became uncool as quickly as it became the coolest thing in the world, if that makes sense.
You know what I really hated about myself when watching this film? That I recognized the woman playing the White Rabbit. Did you recognize?
Oh, yeah, me too.
Yeah. So I recognized. I'm like, where did I? So I go on IMDb and I'm going, Oh fuck! I actually know it from Home and Away, don't I?
Yeah.
Yeah,
I was so
yeah.
upset with myself. You too as well.
Yeah.
I was so upset with myself for some reason that the only thing she's done other than this, right, worth mentioning, is Home and Away.
I got confused. At first I thought she looks a lot like the woman from Cocktail. You know, the horrible woman at the beginning who breaks his heart.
Yeah, yeah.
And then I thought, well, I thought she was born.
That was
when Cocktail was made.
That was Gina Gershon.
I know.
Yeah.
It's totally not.
Yeah.
But I watched it with my wife, and she was like, I know her from somewhere as well. And we did the same thing. Checked online, Home and Away.
Yeah, because nothing else that she's done, you know. So I was like, oh, fucking I know her from Home and Away. It must be when I was sat down watching it with like my mum or something.
I'd tell you the good thing about her being like oddly memorable, because I was exactly saying like that whole like, where the fuck do I know her from? It feels like every time I've watched this movie, I've just been looking at her. But now I know who she is. I know what she's from. I made the mistake of looking at the fucking dude next to her, and there's something just super annoying about that dude. I don't know what it is. Just the ginger goatee. Like, again, I don't think he's a great actor, and they take them to that weird alternative dominatrix club at the start, which is, again, we're kind of stepping on legacy here, but it's only when you go back and watch it. And obviously this film works as an allegory for like trans and, you know, the trans movement and coming out and all that jazz. And it becomes even more obvious now that both actors have come out as trans. But there's also loads of nods to like alternative lifestyles. And it's never clearer than in that club sequence where Neo meets Carrie-Anne Moss for the first time. You see the people, I was suddenly keeping an eye on the people in the background. They're not just wearing leather, they're wearing the kinky, weird leather shit. I'm like, oh, this club is fucking odd. Like there is like people are like doing some proper weird sex shit in the bathrooms in this club.
Right next door to that club was the club from Blade. I'm sure.
Yeah. Just like, dude, don't go to these clubs. It's just the worst, man.
The reason that it upset, like, because he upset me was his name, Choi.
Chode.
Because I thought he said like Troy or something at first, but no, it's
Chode. Is he Troy or Chode? It doesn't matter. They're both terrible names. The guy's a gimp. The guy's a gimp. That was another way to go. But so in the middle section, you get the I Love Kung Fu sequence. You also get obviously a lot of plot, and then I think the Morpheus capture sequence after going to see the Oracle is actually really good. And I think it adds like it kind of sets the bar for how awesome the agents are, because at that point Morpheus, you're thinking, oh, he's like the ultimate badass, and Agent Smith absolutely destroys him. And make no mistake, like the agents in this film are some of the best bad guys in movie history. The way they establish them as just being like, that whole, if anyone who's fought an agent has just died, and they shouldn't be that scary. They're just wearing grey suits. They look like businessmen. But the way they establish it so early in the film, like these are people to just avoid at all costs.
You mean Agent Smith and a slightly taller Paul Rudd?
Yeah, he does look like slightly taller.
On the left. I like, fuck me, is that Paul Rudd? But no, it wasn't, obviously.
But that's the thing, though. I was thinking, are the agents awesome by default? Or is it because Hugo Weaving? Because when I watch this film, I'm like, the other agents they don't have the same.
There are names. They're just they're actual pro. You can see the dissension in his programming that the Agent Smith has. Yeah. He's been there too long. He's starting to become more sentient, I think.
Mm-hmm.
And then you see that in the sequels. I get that. But it's random. I've seen the sequels more than I've seen this one, because I saw them in the cinema and then I watched them after on DVD again. For some reason, I've never gone back to this one until now. But
I would say the sequels actually have easier bits to pick. Like if you were going to like hand pick a sequence to watch for all the issues with the sequels, I can think of like 4 or 5 like long sequences in those films where like, oh, dude, don't worry about the rest of the film. Just watch this bit. Yeah. Watch the chase sequence from Reloaded. Watch the final fight from Revolutions, and they're fucking dope. There are a lot of issues in between, but there are really rewatchable moments. Maybe more rewatchable moments in the other films, whereas this works, I think, more as a movie.
I didn't particularly like the third one. I think the second one, in part, is better. I really like the second one. I love the fight scenes with all of the Smiths.
That gets a bit
ropey. That's so close to being like
it's good, but it gets a bit ropey where it becomes Blade 2 graphics.
Yeah. That's
I get that. It's maybe a bit dated. I appreciate that. Though I do like the chase sequence with number 2, and we're shitting on Legacy. I appreciate that.
Yeah,
but the third one, I'm trying to remember a lot of it. I do like the fight sequence at the end where basically they're both like Jesus Christ. At that point.
Yeah. And they created a machine to because they wanted like the chubbiest Rain. Basically,
Yeah.
they were like, no, we want the fattest Rain. So they had to make a machine to make this super fat Rain. And I've never seen Rain like it in a movie. And that fight sequence at the end between them is amazing. And I actually think, despite some very annoying characters, the attack on Zion's kind of good. But we're getting off piece here. Let's stop
So going
thinking
back to Agent Smith, and you can see it from this, like his descent into becoming more like away from.
Yeah, it's the scene with him and Morpheus where he takes out the earpiece.
I wanted to say that I've never thought about somebody's private life more than Lawrence Fishburne when he's hooked up, because when he's doing his cum face, I'm thinking, does that guy like electroplay in his private life? Like he's hooked up to all these electrodes and he's just doing this face when he's really enjoying it.
It's really creepy as well when he rubs his hands on Fishburne's head.
Yeah.
And he's smelling it. And he's like, I can smell you. And he sticks it in his nose. And you're like,
again, it's all the intonation. I hate this place. It's the smell. You know, it's just something about the way he delivers those lines.
It does sound like a Shatner. Yeah.
It is.
Like a newscaster from like the 50s or something.
It's right from the opening sequence. I remember when I watched it in the cinema, and I couldn't even get what he quite said. It's like, oh, we've sent our men up. And he's like, oh, there's just one little girl. No, Lieutenant, your men are already dead. And there's something about the way he delivered that line right from the off. I'm like, where the fuck is he from? What is up with that line reading? But it makes that character oddly memorable.
with the agents, you know, when they're chasing Neo towards the end, and everywhere he goes, someone twitches and turns into an agent.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So they can obviously jump from person to person. Now, the one thing that went through my mind was there was a little girl holding a parent's hand, and she looks up and it's an agent, and then they obviously run off. Do they come back? You know, once they jump into another body, does that become that person again, or are they done?
No, I think they
go back unless they get shot.
Yeah. I mean, how do you explain that? Oh, my mummy turned into a 6-foot man in a suit, but now she's okay.
Yeah, I was wondering,
rewrite
kind of like,
so forget all about it.
You know, like the scene with Cypher when he's like, I want to be plugged back into the Matrix. I don't want to remember anything, blah, blah, blah. I wonder how much of an impact the Matrix can have over them in terms of their memories. But then that doesn't really work, because theoretically then they could go to like Neo because he's plugged in and just be like, oh, this guy's getting a little bit too kind of like knowing. We'll just wipe his memory and stuff, which... Sorry, I totally forgot to mention at the start of the film, there are a few parts of this film which borderline, like we mentioned the death sequence, the, you know, not like this, where it borders on horror, and the interrogation sequence with Neo and Agent Smith is fucking horrible. When his mouth closes up and then, like, you see the thing go into his belly. For like a mainstream movie, it's pretty on the line, I think. And it's actually a cool nod. I'm not sure if it was planned or they've like retrospectively done it. That sequence, before it goes into the interrogation room, you see a bunch of screens, and it's clearly the room, and I've never noticed before, where the architect is in the second film, where he's sitting there, and remember, he's got all those screens, and like Keanu's on all of them. That's the room you see. You're in that room as if watching it from the point of view of the architect, and then it goes into the interrogation room. And I was wondering if that, like, they had that in mind already, or whether they were kind of like, oh, this would be a cool retcon or something. But
you thought about that. I thought about something completely different, which is when they put that bug in his stomach and then they take it out of him in the car. With all the technology that they meant to have because it's the Matrix and things like that, they could have made that sucker thing a little bit smaller, couldn't they?
Oh, they really could.
Where the fuck did they pull that thing out of?
It was a little bit too big. I mean, it was very
just before that, I'm pretty sure off screen you saw them pull the cord.
It's not like it's 200 years in the future and everyone's got like ray guns and everything. I mean, they're living in a 150-year-old ship. I'd imagine they're just picking up whatever crap.
No, this was in the Matrix when they took it out of him inside the Matrix.
I guess. Yeah. But well, I mean, if it's in the Matrix, does it exist at all? Is it just a, you know?
I know, but if it didn't exist at all, couldn't they have made it smaller? Like that thing had its own generator. It was fucking massive. But I realized we've been talking for a while. Should we get on to the
third section? Yeah. So this is, I actually think, so section 3, there's a 40-minute run, which I'd make an argument might be the greatest last act of any action movie ever. So all plot is basically being dealt with by this point. There's a little bit at the end with the one thing and stuff like that. But back to back to back, and there is no gap in this. There's no narrative breakaways. I've listed them down. You get from this, basically, as soon as they decide, oh, we're going to take back, we're going to go save Morpheus, you get guns, lots of guns, which is, again, visually iconic. Go straight into the hallway sequence, which is a fantastic, we mentioned it earlier, that everyone remembers the soundtrack, but everyone forgets the score. And the bit when they're walking through the door, and it's almost like the Terminator. It's like boom, boom, like just making it really important. And the moment, obviously, they reveal the guns, then the music kicks in. Then there's the bullet time, which I made an argument for being the most groundbreaking single shot of my lifetime. Goes straight into the helicopter in Trinity Save, one of the great explosions, as you already mentioned, Dave. 5, right into the train platform fight, which admittedly embraces its genre trappings a bit too strongly and gets a little bit cheesy, but I love that sequence. And then goes finally into the aforementioned chase sequence and the one thing. That all happens, 6 action sequences ostensibly, no breaks. It's just 40 minutes of non-stop, top-tier action.
That's where I have to disagree slightly. Is I agree with you on the fact that, yeah, there's non-stop, and I think they get better. I don't think it starts on top tier. That hallway sequence for me, and correct me or don't correct me, feel free to say your points in a second, but I think it gets a bit stupid, which inside the meat. But he's meant to be the one. He's meant to be the person who can control the Matrix more than other people. Yet, for some reason, Carrie-Anne Moss becomes Superwoman as well. Like, for a start, you're getting hit by bullets. I don't fucking care who you are. There were so many men and only a couple of pillars. Someone was getting shot at that point, but they were able to just walk straight through the pillars. And Keanu Reeves is able to shoot directly in front of him at people that aren't there because they're shooting the pillars to his right. There's nobody in front of him he's shooting. They're shooting him from the right. And then he picks up a gun, does a cartwheel, she's running around the sea. It just becomes totally farcical at that point. And I really, really wasn't there for it.
Oh, that is, I'm surprised because I think that sequence is absolutely unbelievable.
Yeah, and again, one of those things where I'm probably right.
No, that's fair enough. Yeah.
Well. Yeah. And
I get what you mean.
I just think they're building him up to become this one.
Yeah, but at that point, I think at that point, and you see the elevation of his skill set in those sequences.
Yeah, but what
because
about
he hasn't been.
But she becomes the one.
No, she doesn't become the one.
Oh, fucking hell, dude. She's 2 seconds away from flying through that. It's
but you see that right from the start. Like, she's clearly mega talented. And again, we haven't even mentioned the cold opening to this film where she kicks ass, like does the huge jump and stuff. She's clearly mega talented. And Keanu is at the start, and it's only as he goes, and it's like, you know, the dodging bullet things. She's like, she'd never seen it before, and, you know, he still got hit. And then by the end, he is, quote unquote, the one. But I think at that point, they're probably level pegging in terms of abilities, or that's what they're suggesting. But I know what you mean in terms of, like, they're just shooting everything. Everything's exploding. How is he not getting hit? I totally get it. If
also,
you want to
he
pick
shouldn't be able to move with that amount of hardware on him. Like, he walked through with, like, 50, but not even just one of each. He had 2 of each gun. So he should have walked through that metal detector, hunched over. Just, like, that's a lot of metal.
It's weird how, like, well that's aged as well. Like, in terms of, like, the style and everything, it's I know it's like the Matrix style, but there's a weird thing about, like, going back to films from, like, basically the late 90s through to now, where a lot of them, the fashion, everything else, it isn't too egregious. There isn't a huge amount that gives away the fact that this was made in 1999. It's odd that for a lot of these films, if you go back as far as 2000, the only things that give away it's old are the mobile phones, like the banana mobile phone, and
the best
monitors.
phone of all time.
Everyone wanted that fucking banana phone. Everyone
loved that phone. Everyone wanted that phone. It was the coolest thing in the world.
But don't you think that's what I love?
What I loved is when people had that phone, like we were in college and about 4 or 5 people, and they kept doing it. They kept going, watch, and all of a sudden it would fly off. You've overdone the spring. It's the best thing in the world.
And then you got a 3210 because those were indestructible, of course. Yeah. But it is weird that you can go back 20 odd years and there's like a few signifiers to say. It was like, you know, when we went back and did even stuff into the 90s, like Con Air and stuff, where you're like, oh, that could have been made like yesterday. But if you go back as far as like the 80s, it's like, well, that's the 80s because everybody looks like they're from the 80s. You go back to the 70s and there's a look attached to the 70s. Yeah, well, that's the 70s. And the same with the 60s and even with Americana in the 50s. But then from like 2000 onwards, it all gets a little bit like everything's just a bit samey almost, where you're like, there are parts of this film where I'm not like, oh, this is a late 90s film. But then obviously you see the mobile phone, and that's a bit of a
when you see the CRT monitors and things. That's
yeah. But it's not the people or the fashion, bizarrely.
What did you going back? What did you think, David? The action sequence there?
I'm sort of slightly in the middle between the two of you. It was amazing. At the time, I thought it was brilliant. But I get what you're saying. You know, the jumping about, it all gets a bit a bit hammed up after a while. The only criticism I had of it, which is just stupid, really, just too technical.
Welcome to this podcast.
Yeah. He's walking down, firing 9mm rounds at people, and then it looks at the ground, and there's automatic machine gun casings hitting the ground, which doesn't actually affect the film. But I looked at that and went, "That's wrong."
Oh, yeah, that's
fantastic.
Yeah.
Welcome to what is it? The Point Break meatball sub debate.
yeah.
The only other thing I thought about this is if you die in the Matrix, you die in reality, right? They murder an awful lot of law enforcement.
They really do.
Always do this film, and don't bat an eyelid. So they've murdered all these people who are just doing their job.
It's like the unnamed goon from Austin Powers.
I had there. Maybe you can answer. We'll go back into the rest of the action sequences. Morpheus said humans are now grown because they can provide energy as a battery. Do they provide it as they live, or do they have to be consumed?
No, as they live. So
as they live.
Humans produce heat and electricity, which they can harvest. So they're using them as a battery while they live. So that explained then why they flush when Morpheus was unplugged. Not Morpheus, Neo was unplugged. They flushed him down the tube. Like they were just happy to. Like, did they know he was alive when he was unplugged? They do say that when people die, they basically get whizzed up and then fed.
Yeah, because the other robots are taking those things and eating them. But why did Neo specifically get flushed down the water slide?
Oh, because I think they've hacked it in the real world. Like, and you get it the same in Resurrections. That robot,
why do they all have a water slide connected to them then?
Well, because don't get me wrong. I think when they die, they
put someone else in there.
Okay.
Yeah, they probably, if it was like under normal circumstances, I think the person dies and they just go down the slide, like you say, into the sludge, and they just get reconsumed as basically food for. So
if they're doing that, then why is there why is there scenes of the robots taking some of those pods and eating them?
Well, they could just be moving them, like you would have a battery. And
when he comes up, when Neo wakes up and he looks around. Mm-hmm. There's one of the big robots taking a pod and consuming the pod.
I think it's just moving the pod.
Moving it, isn't it?
Is it? I don't know.
It looks like, that's how I see it.
As a robot, it wouldn't eat.
No. But what I'm not trying to be facetious. I'm trying to understand. Is that person that pod? Is that person dead and they're moving him?
No. I think they're just.
Why is if Neil's meant to be dead? Why are they flushing him down a big water slide? I don't understand why there's two separate.
Were the robots taking the babies and moving them into the new spots?
They did show the babies, but you only saw, like, when he looked around and you saw the basically what looked like, again, the Blade 3 blood bank. Mm-hmm. You just saw him move one of those pods, not move a pod. You saw him take the pod off, and like it looked like he was consuming it.
Yeah, I know what you mean. I think it's basically the equivalent of like taking the batteries out of your controller and putting them in something else because you need.
So where's that battery going then? So if that battery's
into another tower, because there's like a bunch of towers. I think it's just powering different things. That's what I think of it anyway. But God knows.
I know. I'm just trying to understand why it was special enough to get flushed down the water slide, but the other ones, if they're
because they needed it, didn't they? So I assume they saw that.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, like going back to like the action sequences, I in fairness, as much as I like the hallway sequence. That was the one I found the easiest to pick holes in, because like it is style over substance at that point. Whereas we can say about how it's aged, like the whole bullet time thing was done, and that's basically what the later sequel was all about. I still think it looks fantastic and utterly unique. But
one thing I really think before you move on from it, when they set the bomb in the lift and they drop it down, when the bomb goes off and it slow motion explodes. Every pillar is exactly as it was when they walked in. So there's no bullet holes, there's no explosions. It's all perfect again. I was
just looking at the slightly dodgy CG door in that sequence. But I actually think maybe the best fight sequence, and I do love the train platform fight as well. But the helicopter and Trinity save, where it really is, because I think that's the point where they establish how he might actually be the one. And he jumps out the helicopter, he catches Morpheus, but then the whole thing when the helicopter's going down and he pulls it back, like that whole sequence is absolutely unbelievable. Which
I've seen this film loads of times, and even last night I was thinking, there's no way you could hold up a helicopter on that rope. And then I was like, oh, no, wait, she jumps onto it.
Yeah, she jumps on. And it's just, And again, like the whole thing when they're just like the two of them at the end, I'm just like, again, the chemistry, even with like no words, I'm like, I'm all in on this, all fucking in.
He's beginning to believe, and he wraps his arm around the thing because maybe he does think he's going to hold up a helicopter. And I was there, same as you, going, well, I've wrapped my arm around my dog's lead, and I still can't hold the fucker. So I don't know what the fuck he's doing. Like,
towards the end of this film, obviously, it goes a little bit, full. In a way that the sequels did, almost a little bit hokey with the whole sci-fi thing. It went further and further down the sci-fi thing, and further away from like.
I think it does have to at that point because they've
been
laying the seed all along that there is one reincarnated soul that can control the Matrix. So at some point, you've got to have the guy who can just see computer code while he's inside and things like that. And I appreciated that. I thought that was done really well. And like when he's Agent Smith is going full on, and he's just there, just doing his little blocking stuff and all, and then he possesses Agent Smith and just pops him from the inside and things.
It is cool. But what I like about that, and it's something that's been lost in so many modern films, again, it comes back to the marvelization of modern day cinema, is that this film leaves plenty of options available for sequels. And obviously back then, when this was released, this wasn't a guaranteed hit by any stretch of the imagination. You just think of all the people who turned down the lead role of Neo. But what it does is it leaves the door open for potential sequels. But if it had just been this movie, it would have been fine. And it's because it doesn't put the cart in front of the horse. It's just like, all right, this movie has to work in and of itself. If there's never another Matrix, does this film work? Absolutely, because your imagination can go off, oh, what could happen next, blah, blah, blah. But it left the door open for plenty to work with for sequels. But I love the fact that this works as a completely standalone movie. You can, if you didn't watch another Matrix film, it'd be fine. Like this works completely in and of itself.
To be fair, I probably won't go back to the sequels or anything like that. I was happy to rewatch it this time, but it's not me. Sometimes on this podcast or outside of, I'll watch a film and I'll think, oh, you know what? I want to watch the sequels. Last week, no shame in it at all. I watched Roadhouse 2. Do you know what I mean?
If you've watched Roadhouse 2, I'd say you could do worse than watching the Matrix sequels.
But for some reason, I will not go back and go, do you know what I really want to watch?
When I'm watching TV and I'm flicking through the channels, sometimes I'll just run through the movie channels. And if the Matrix is on, I'll quite often just sit there and watch it, maybe just for 20 minutes. Watch little bits of it. So I've watched the first film from beginning to end multiple times. But I don't think I've ever watched the second or the third film in one go. I've watched bits of it. They're all a bit mixed up, but I know what I like.
I went back and watched, ahead of Resurrections coming out, I rewatched the entire trilogy again, like a couple of years ago. And the second and third films are still as flawed as you remember, but the ambition of them puts so many modern movies to shame. Like they are fucking going for it, and you just don't get it. Like so many modern films feel so safe, and for all their faults, the sequels do not feel safe. They are absolutely swinging for the fences. And a perfect example is that 100 Agent Smith fight. It doesn't quite work because the technology wasn't there, but in terms of like sheer ambition, I'm like, have I seen another action sequence in a modern movie like recently which comes close to that? Like again, does it quite stick the landing? No, it needed to be 10-15 years later maybe. But I'm like, have I seen another action sequence even remotely that insane? I was like, I don't think I have. There's nothing like it.
I was thinking something different when you said about swinging for the fences. They were swinging for the fences in the sequels. And I can't remember if it was the second or third one. I think it's the second one. When they had the Zion multiple group orgy.
Oh, the second
they were swinging for the fences at that point, weren't they?
Oh,
that's oiled down. In my mind, they were all just, it was like Caligula.
It was a fuckfest going on.
The end is coming. Yeah.
So am I. That is one of the parts of the film, of which there are many, which doesn't work. The second, and I agree with Dave, I think the second one is actually really close to being an exceptional movie. I think it's definitely more good than bad. I'd make the argument that the second film is
the twins just ghosting around everywhere. Really
well,
I like the story with the key maker as well.
Yeah, I like that. The chase, I like the fucking
better story.
I was just in it for Monica.
Monica Bellucci. Dear fucking God.
Right, are we going to move on? Because
before I just had to mention, I actually quite like The Architect. I love The Architect, man.
See, I can't see The Architect without thinking of Will Ferrell.
Will Ferrell, yeah, we'll get to that legacy in the NTV section. All right, so should we
just before you do move on? Can we just say about the helicopter scenes? As soon as I saw the helicopter lowering in, all I could think of was True Lies with the
Yeah.
Jump jet scene. And how does he not mow Morpheus down when he is absolutely? you watch him at one stage, he's just whipping that around. I mean, he's not aiming at it.
Were they the right shells coming out of that gun?
They were.
In fairness, I think there is one bit when you see him going between, and he does drop it as he shoots through the middle of the room.
So he takes out Morpheus' shins.
I think they do try and make an effort to say, oh, well, he's shooting around Morpheus. Maybe I'll give him the benefit there, but yeah.
I don't know though. I mean, he's trying to control that.
Well, the rest of that sequence is amazing, and we'll get to it.
Actually, I will, because I shit on the first part of it. I think that sequence is great. I love the way you get the lag. The helicopter crashes into the glass, and you get the bubble, and it feels like it's lagging before it explodes. I think it looks great.
Yeah.
I honestly thought as well, oh shit, is he believing when he's going to just hold a helicopter up? Oh, no, actually, he's just pulling up Trinity. Like, I think that looks great. I think it looks amazing.
The score in that sequence is amazing.
They can't put rain in there, so they decide to just add from the sprinklers, because, we got to make it all wet again. I think it looks quite good.
It has to be wet in this film. It's got to be wet, dude.
I mean, especially after seeing Morpheus' cum face, he's got to be a bit wet in there.
I actually think he does a really good job with his eyes in that sequence in terms of like coming out of the whole trance thing. Yeah, I thought that was actually pretty cool. But never mind. Do we need to move on to favorite scene?
Yeah, Dave,
cool.
Go first.
My favorite scene by far is the moment where Neo wakes up after being shot, and it's that sort of godly sort of, yes, I am the one. And like the score in the background is just so powerful. Everything rises to a crescendo. The look in the agents' faces where they just can't believe that he's not dead, and with ease beats off Agent Smith. Maybe more choice of words there, but you know what I mean.
Well, I mean, Rob did open the podcast with blowing people or whatever it was. So, it's fine.
So yeah,
keep it in line with the tone that was established very early in the podcast.
As good and as much as I love all the action, I just love the simplicity of it, and I just thought that was perfect. I enjoyed that.
Cool.
Yep.
Well, it carries. I was going to mention it earlier, but I mean, it could have been the I Know Kung Fu sequence. It could have been bullet time. It could have been the hallway sequence, despite its faults, and obviously the helicopter sequence, which I adore. But I think it might be the train platform sequence with Agent Smith, which I think is absolutely fantastic. The fight choreography there, and again, I talked about it earlier about how the most recent sequel, everything is tight in terms of the way it's shot, the action sequences. That I love the way they frame it. I love the fact that they lean into genre. They really kind of play it off as like a Western at that point. It's borderline cheesy a bit when like Keanu does his little pose at the end. Yeah. I love all that. And everyone remembers like the key bullet time sequence. But I actually think the bit when they dive at each other in the air and they're trying to shoot each other in the head and the camera's panning around, I think that might be one of the most exceptional.
I think that's aged better than I think
it has.
On the rooftop.
The bullet dodge.
That started to look a bit ropey. But when they jump at each other and they're doing that, I think that looked great. And you're out and so are you kind of.
And that is the thing. It's not just an action sequence. And I mentioned it earlier in the podcast that so much of this film rests on that chemistry between Keanu and fucking everyone in this film. You get that with him and Agent Smith. Like it's not just and again, you get in a lot of movies where suddenly you're fighting the bad guy at the end of the film and you're like, why do I care about this? Why do they have animosity towards each other? When they fight each other at the end, you're like, oh, Agent Smith fucking hates this guy, hates it. But yeah, the chemistry is absolutely bubbling. The choreography is fantastic. The cinematography in that sequence is amazing. I think it all comes together in the train sequence at the end.
Cool. Mine may be a bit random compared to those two, but again, it's another Agent Smith one. We seem to be on a trend here. Mm-hmm. It's the introduction of him. No, Lieutenant, your men are already dead. Like, I just love the introduction of him. Just, this guy's going to be a thorn in the side from that point onwards. So I said,
and that's the point of the film when it still looks like a neo-noir film. Like it's dark, it's raining, everything's coated in shadows. Everyone has that, like Batman '89, where you're like, it's kind of the future, but it's also kind of the 1950s.
Yeah,
the start of this film has that vibe. It's almost like, is this the 50s or the fucking future? I don't get it.
If you don't know what it's about, because a lot of the marketing for this was, what is the Matrix? Yeah. If you didn't know what the film was about when you went into it, and you just see the introduction now, you just think he's just going to be a normal agent just hunting these guys, and he's going to be a prick, and then all of a sudden you realize, oh fucking hell, he's a computer program. Like I think his introduction is great, and I think that that leads to such an intriguing character that Hugo Weaving plays, and I think he does really
right the way through the trilogy as well. Like he's at the very heart. Like he's one. Like obviously you have Keanu and Carrie-Anne Moss and stuff, but Agent Smith is essential throughout the entire trilogy. Absolutely.
Yeah. Should we move on to loves?
Loves, sure. Do you want to go first, Dave?
Yeah, okay. First love was the costume design. I just think, especially when they're in the Matrix, it looks incredible. When he's walking up to do the hallway scene, and he's got like the New Rock boots with the chainmail armor on the toe caps. Amazing. You know, like I said, how many times have we all walked around with leather dusters on? You know, I wore one all the way through my college years, you know. I probably look like a prick, but you know, the sunglasses, you know, everyone had a bespoke set.
But it was so cool then. Like I said, before it became a joke and before it became uncool, because it became overplayed, for 3-4 years, man, that was the fucking look, dude.
Yeah,
it was amazing.
Look. I mean, Metros was a bit. We got a club in Cardiff called Metros that is just an underground, literally underground punk club, and
it's not a punk club.
It's not a punk club. It's a rock club.
It was when you but there was a lot of. Well, it was sweaty in the first place, but then during like the 90s and 2000s, there's a lot more sweaty because people are just rocking up just dressed in leather. Oh my God, there was a pungent smell, should we say?
Oh, absolutely.
You know, what's this?
Second would be the music. I love the mixture of sort of dance music and rock music. You know, from when they went to the club with Rob Zombie in the background, and how they end with
"Wake Up" by Rage Against the Machine. Yeah,
brilliant. But I also, you know, not a big dance fan, but it was very similar with Blade, wasn't it? You know, when they go, it fits the fight scenes and stuff. But the score, as you've said, the background is amazing. It really,
I don't know how it works so well. I don't know how the score, like, because like you said, everyone remembers it for the soundtrack because it was so iconic at the time. But to bring it back to that hallway sequence, I'd never really noticed how the score leads directly into the soundtrack in the same scene, and it just works beautifully in this film.
And it really heightens the mood, doesn't it? And it really captures what's going on. It's really good.
Yeah.
And then my final one is just the immense amount of fight scenes and how well choreographed everything is and how great it still looks nearly 25 years on.
Yeah, totally. For me, number one, the visuals and the cinematography. As I said, I think this film looks as good now as it did in 1999 and actually looks better than a lot of modern films. Number two, just the last 40 minutes. Like I said, I really do think it is a pure masterpiece of action cinema, the last 40 minutes of this film. And number three, the core kind of 4 cast members. As I mentioned, the rest of the cast is a real mixed bag. Oh, and I do want to give a shout out to Gloria Foster as the Oracle, who actually died before the sequel.
Yeah, because the Oracle was different. Yeah.
She is so fucking good in like the limited screen time she's got. Like she feels like such a real character, which I know is bizarre because she's obviously a program. But like that lived in house, you know, the fact that she's smoking a cigarette, making cookies, she just feels utterly believable. And the way she like delivers the news, like you know, I think she famously says, "Oh, I hate giving bad news to good people," and you absolutely believe her. And you're like, if you're going to get given bad news, I'd love it to be given by Gloria Foster playing the Oracle.
I know.
So good in this film.
If we're talking about the Oracle scene, a shout out to young Yuri Bremner in there.
Yuri Geller.
Yuri Geller.
Well, he is in fairness. He is bold, so the Yuri Brenner kind of works as well. So we'll give him that. But yeah, those are my 3 loves anyway.
Yeah, mine are basically like an amalgamation. I love the way it looks, the visuals. Again, I said it before, the way it looks like you're looking through a computer screen when you're looking at the Matrix. I think it looks great. The cast, but specifically Hugo Weaving, I think he's fantastic in it. I think he's great. And the last, I'll go with 30 minutes.
Fair enough. Once they get to the roof, basically, you're all good.
Oh, actually, yeah, the roof's, I don't know, because bullet time, I said it starts to age.
Maybe the last 15.
The last 15 minutes.
It's weird that you say that because I think it does come back to what you said earlier, the fact that you didn't see this in the cinema. And I know because it was like parodied and all that, it doesn't have the same impact and maybe it has aged. But like I said, going to see this in 1999, I was like, I cannot believe what I've just seen. And as I said, like, I can't think of another single shot that's had the same impact on me, where in terms of like legitimately seeing something you've never seen before, I was just like, I don't think there's anything that matches it in my lifetime. Where as soon as it started moving around and the sound effects are fantastic and the bullets come through, I was just like, what the fuck just happened? And obviously that was the key moment for a lot of people, but it's not the same now. But in 1999, Jesus wept. What an impact.
Yeah.
In terms of hates, do you want to go first again, dude?
Can I just probably guess that all of us are just going to say mouse?
Well, I could literally have hates 1, 2, and 3 as mouse, and mouse. Very, very easily, but I am going to throw a few others in. But
yeah, okay. So personally, I think the film, the visuals, the story are all pretty perfect. If I'm honest, there was very little that I could pick hold on. Mm-hmm. So yeah, number one, mouse. That guy is the most annoying character I've ever seen in a film. Number two is. I don't want to shit on Keanu.
No, that's fair enough.
I think he's very, very good in this film. The dude just can't act. I mean, he is very limited in his range, you know, and but he works with this because he doesn't have to act a lot, because he does just look confused most of the time, because he is confused most of the time.
He knows his acting style and he goes with it. And you can't fault that.
Yeah. It's basically you fall in one of two camps. You either say he's bad or he's unique. I would argue that he's maybe a little bit of both. But he is, like I said, the one thing he is oddly watchable. Like he absolutely, every time he's on the screen, I'm looking at Keanu Reeves. But if somebody made the argument that I just think he's a fundamentally bad actor, I'm like, I get it. I totally get it.
You know, there are actors that are bad that I just cannot bear to watch. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he's not one of them. He's just not. Yeah. I love his films, so yeah, that's fine. And I think probably the only other thing I could criticise, as you brought up earlier, is some of the supporting actors and cast. They're just not at the same level, are they? And it shows.
To be fair, I don't want to go into Liam's takeover, but they're probably in mine as well, because I wrote them down as the cannon fodder cast.
Yeah,
they were literally there just to be killed at a certain point, and they just didn't. They didn't need to build up any characterization of them, so they didn't. Mm-hmm. Sorry,
you get characters like this, but I think the best films, like the kind of auxiliary characters, whatever you want to call them, become memorable, and they maybe are memorable in this, but they're just not good, and that is one of the issues. But yeah, in terms of my hates, number one is, and I really do hate Mouse. I'm sorry, I can't fucking stand him. Just every second he's on screen is like nails down a chalkboard. Number two, the fact that the sequels never quite lived up to the promise of the original.
He fucking does this all the time. I know, but it's got to be about this film, not about the legacy.
There is an issue. I mean, I could just list like a bunch of other cast members. I mentioned I dislike Tank, for instance. So we'll have number two officially as Tank. But I have to mention the fact that with the sequels, the big issue is, as much as I like the sequels, and I do think there's a lot good there, they never live up to the promise of the first one, because I think the first one is pretty close to a perfect movie, and it's a shame that it never quite. It's never as good as the first film again. Never gets close to it. And number three, the real world stuff is never quite as compelling as The Matrix. I like, whenever I'm in this film, I'd always prefer to be in The Matrix. The real world stuff, absolutely necessary, never quite as compelling, never as visually interesting. It's just a kind of like, oh, look, everything's a bit shit and messy. I just prefer the kind of...
He wants to go back in The Matrix. I said you'd enjoy fans of the podcast. You want to be plugged back in.
Oh, basically, yeah. I mean, nobody wants to eat that slop in there. Once you see that slop in the bowl, you're just like, I kind of get. And you compare that.
What are people fighting for? They're fighting for the right to live underground and have nothing.
Yeah.
Why not just think, fuck it, let's just go back in the Matrix?
There's no argument stronger for what's his name, Cypher. What Cypher does than the cut from all the chat about tasty wheat and that goop you see in the bowl to that goddamn steak he's eating. I'm like, dude, I want to be eating the fucking steak. I want to be an actor. I don't want to be on that ship with fucking mouse telling me about chicken.
You're not living your best life when you're in Zion, you. I mean, don't get me wrong, the orgy's probably better than it.
Yeah.
No, that's not this is turning into a hashtag Thanos was right podcast, isn't it? So what are your hates, sir?
Mouse. I mean, I had it in there. So, second, I already said it was the cannon fodder. So, Mouse, and then the second was the cannon fodder. It was the cannon fodder cast. They just didn't build them up. They didn't need to. They were just there to die. And yeah, I don't know. It seemed a bit pointless. I mean, now you've made me think about it. Third is the fact that they want to live outside in the real world. My third is, I do this quite a lot. I hate him because he's done such a good job. I hate Cypher. I hate Cypher because Joey Pantalone's done such a good job in making you hate Cypher.
Oh yeah.
But he's creeping all over an unconscious, like basically he's roofied Carrie-Anne Moss at this point.
Basically, let's make no qualms about it. He wants to screw everyone over because Carrie-Anne Moss won't fuck him. Basically, that's it. He's just jealous because of the way he looks at. And let's be clear, like he's great in this film, but dude, you don't look like Keanu Reeves. Like it's like, oh, you never brought me breakfast or lunch. I'm like, yeah, because you don't look like Keanu Reeves.
Would you fuck a guy who clearly looks like Satan?
Yeah, exactly. I mean, like, he's just being such a dick. I was like, dude, of course, she's like so out of your league. Just get over it, man. Anyway, never mind. Are there any alternative titles for this film? I would be amazed if they were.
There are.
There's
a couple.
There's a cracker.
Yeah, there's a couple. Let me see if I can find them. So in Taiwan, it's called Hacking Missions.
Oh, dude, that's pony.
Yeah. What else have we got here? I had to take pictures, so bear with me a sec. In Japan, Google might be a bit racist.
Often is.
I'll spell it out first. Matorikkusu. Matorikkusu.
Matorikkusu. Hi. Arigatou gozaimasu. Matorikkusu.
So he did that so good. In Lithuania.
Watashi wa nihongo ga wakarimasen.
In Lithuania, it's called Decal.
What the fuck?
Yeah.
Okay.
In Hong Kong, it's called 22nd Century Killing Network.
Now that's
that is a little on the nose. That's the straight to DVD equivalent for sure.
Yeah. In Iceland, it's called Array.
Nope.
In Estonia, I'll spell it out, Matriks. Matrix. They've gone very literal.
Yeah. Maybe it's just like a sound thing. I don't know. It's got to be a language thing.
But that's it. That's the alternate titles.
Fair enough. How many facts do you have for this film? Do you have a couple of favourites, perhaps? Top 3 or 4? Because there's going to be tons, obviously.
Yeah, there's a few. I mean, I'll let Dave go first, but I think we all know this fact, so I'll say it quickly anyway. Will Smith?
Yeah.
So Will Smith was
one of many.
Was meant to do this, but he turned it. Thankfully, he turned it down for Wild Wild West. I mean, as much as I'm a huge Keanu Reeves fan, I fucking hate Will Smith.
Yeah, me too.
I couldn't imagine him doing this.
You can see why they would have wanted him. This would have been a much easier film to finance in 1999 off the back of Bad Boys, off the back of, obviously, Independence Day, to get it made with Will Smith, because he was incredibly hot property. He actually became hotter property in the next 4 or 5 years, if anything. I mean, what he had, like we mentioned before, for all the criticism, for like a 5-6 year span, he was the most bankable star in Hollywood by a country mile. It wasn't even close. But yeah, I get why they were talking about, and he's just a Men in Black as well, like super bankable at this time. And Keanu Reeves, obviously everyone knows and loves him now, but he's had real peaks and troughs. And if anything, he came into this off the back of a trough. I don't think anyone was like, man, this looks like Johnny Mnemonic 2. I can't fucking wait. It was just like, nobody was like, waiting with bated breath the next Keanu Reeves movie in 1999. So it worked out, but yeah, just by luck more than by design, I guess.
But it's not just Will Smith. Some of the other actors.
Yeah.
It's Val Kilmer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, makes sense back then, I suppose.
Big hitters. Carrie-Anne Moss wasn't the first choice either. They looked at Salma Hayek, Sandra Bullock, Madonna.
I mean, to be fair, I'd love to see Salma Hayek and all that leather.
I'm not.
It wouldn't work. She's too feminine, I think, too sexy.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong. The idea of, like, Salma Hayek is utterly gorgeous. I mean, 1999 Salma Hayek is one of the most beautiful women in the world, without question. But I just think that Carrie-Anne Moss brings a right combination.
No,
it wouldn't work for the Matrix film, but it works in my mind. I'm sorry.
It would have worked. I mean, 1999, we were all like, 16, 17. It would have worked for us for sure.
I don't even need to watch the first 3 minutes. It was a great 3 minutes, but I'm done. He's really pretty. Yeah.
Carrie-Anne Moss, I think, brings the right combination of like beauty and toughness to the role, for sure.
Agreed. There was a specialist sunglass company, the Blinds Design Project, who brought in to give everyone individual cool-ass glasses, I would say. Mm-hmm. We've gone through the colour-coded worlds, which I thought was cool. Mm-hmm. They filmed a lot of it in Sydney in Australia to save money. They reckon it probably would have cost close to 95 million in America, but it came down to around 60 million.
Yeah, it kind of totally works as generic US city for sure.
Apparently, it's a trans metaphor.
Oh, well, that's clear because of what happens. I mean, the whole being trapped in a certain body, wanting to come out as somebody else, the fact that both directors came out as trans, all the alternative lifestyle stuff. I mean, it's not even supposedly anymore. It's clearly a trans metaphor.
I've never noticed it. There we go.
I think when it was filmed, because they were, I guess, hidden at that time.
Yeah.
You're not seeing that so they
hadn't come out as trans at that point.
I mean, it's
because they both have.
You go on to Legacy a little bit when I'll let you finish the second, but you go on to Legacy and you got because I was expecting it to be changed at the end, directed by the Wachowski brothers. Then as you go on, it becomes the Wachowski siblings, and then as you go on now, it's just the Wachowski sisters. Mm-hmm. So I was expecting it to become the sisters, but they didn't actually go back and change it. But no, I never would have watched this film pure as an allegory for.
I think it's one of those films that people did make an attachment. And again, I think it's a lot of the alternative lifestyle stuff that it hints towards. I think people did make that kind of jump between the two. But of course, back then it's just theory. But when both directors then come out as trans, it's not theory anymore. I think it is just fact, basically.
Also, I'd like to say one came out better than the other.
Oh, 100%. 100%. Lana Wachowski is really just...
You 100% think that was a woman, wouldn't you?
Yeah.
Whereas the other just looks like a guy in a wig.
Yeah. I think it just happened.
The other one looks like Buffalo Bill from Silence of the Lambs.
I know that sounds harsh and stuff like that, and I don't want to pick holes in people's lifestyle choices. But like anything else, like people making transitions, there's so many factors which we'll go into. And if you want to do something a little less sensitive, I suppose we've mentioned before, it's the same with plastic surgery. Some people just take well to plastic surgery. The shining beacon is Cher. Like, she just seems to get away with it and always she's looked 50 for 40 years now or something like that. But other people, they do one little thing and it's just like, what the fuck happened to your face?
Other people
it just doesn't work. So I think it's like so much genetics, luck of the draw, all that jazz.
Yeah. Any more, Dave?
So it's a lot of anime-inspired work within this. There's been lots of links between Ghost in the Shell.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. Visually, this looks like so many late 80s, early 90s animes. And the obvious ones are your Akiras and your Ghost in the Shells, but they were hugely influential on this film.
Yeah. We've touched on it previously. Massive amounts of training required. So they had to take 4 months worth of training. And Keanu actually had pretty serious neck injury, which he was sort of nursing through his training because he didn't want to lose the starring role, so he ended up having to have pretty major surgery as well to sort that out. He earned every penny of that massive cut. Didn't he get rich from this film? Really rich, because he had a cut of the basically of the movie. He did a bit of a Alec Guinness with Star Wars, where he was like, "Oh, I'll have a slice of the overall pie," and of course, it's turned into this mega franchise. So he got paid so much money for these films. But Keanu being Keanu, I think he went out and bought cars for all of the stunt teams, watches and stuff, because he's just the fucking nicest guy in the world, apparently. Apparently they all had a lot of homework, so they were given certain things to read and to master
that book.
So simulacra and simulation. I don't know what that
is. Isn't that actually in the film? I think that's
that's the book he opens that takes the discount, which I don't know what he's selling at that point.
No, I have no idea. I literally don't know what he's selling. It's the whole if you get caught with this didn't happen, blah blah. I'm like, what the fuck is he buying off him? I have no idea.
Any more, Dave?
No, that's fine.
Right, so I got a couple. Going on to the Keanu Reeves one, also Carrie-Anne Moss. So she twisted her ankle while shooting one of the scenes, but decided not to tell anyone, so they wouldn't recast her. So that seems to be a thing in this film. They knew what they were in, I guess, at that point. So they were like, no, I'll play hurt. I'll play injured. The studio insisted on a great deal of explanatory dialogue as they described the screenplay as the script nobody understands.
Jesus Christ. Yeah. I mean, we take it for granted now, but for a lot of people, it'd be like, what the fuck is this? Well, it was so groundbreaking.
While I look for the others.
Yeah, I watched it last night with my wife, and she still has no idea what's going on. I mean, it doesn't help that this is the 4th time I've tried to get her to watch it, and she's fallen asleep every single time.
Yeah, that's not going to help.
She kept saying to me, so when they're in the Matrix, that's the real world, right? I'm like, no, that's a computer program made to keep everyone happy so they can use it. Yeah, but it's the real world, isn't it? I'm like, no, it looks like the real world. She just couldn't get her head around it. And I was like, At this point, you either get it, or you don't. I can't keep going over.
Yeah, you got to throw in the towel. Yeah, like The Matrix has been out for Jesus Christ, God, 24 years now. If she doesn't like, even if you haven't seen the film, how do you not understand the plot of The Matrix? It became so synonymous with popular culture for so long that everyone knows like the whole question. What is the Matrix?
There's no Kardashians in it.
Yeah.
Well, it doesn't matter anymore because everyone knows what the fucking Matrix is, apparently, except for Rachel, which is insane.
By the middle of 2002, Bullet Time had been spoofed in 20 different movies. Oh, sorry, over 20 movies.
Yeah. That was one of the big issues. As I mentioned, it happened to a bunch of films where victim of its own success, spoofed too much, and it just, like I said, it became uncool.
Yeah, there's hundreds of facts, and they all go back to things that we've covered and stuff. So we'll just move on.
All right, in terms of legacy, we've already mentioned some of these. The fact that this was maybe the most culturally impactful film certainly of my lifetime anyway. We mentioned the sequels, a real mixed bag. I think the second one is close to being a very good film, despite its faults. The third film, there's great stuff in a really flawed film. And Resurrections is maybe one of the most interesting sequels of modern times. It's just not particularly good. I think the first half is close to being actually quite good, but then it's the second half when it kind of falls back on more traditional tropes and set pieces, when it becomes really bland and you suddenly start noticing, wait, why does this film look like shit? It's very strange.
I disagree. I don't like the first half because basically all they're doing is recapping the other films.
Yeah.
The amount of flashbacks of the film, and you just think, doesn't need all this.
Well, it does, because the first half of this film, I've never seen the sequel, which is basically, all right, for 45 minutes, we are going to deconstruct the entire trilogy and what it means, not only in terms of itself, in terms of what it brought cinematically, but what it brought culturally, and then the whole bullet time thing. As I said, it doesn't all work. I think I found it infinitely interesting, but also strangely bad. It's a really, really weird film.
Speaking of legacy, Mike, we got to mention one of the best names ever when they did the animated film, The Animatrix.
Oh, dude, that's the next thing on my list.
Oh, sorry.
No, there are other animes, like shorts based on the likes of Batman, Halo, and Star Wars and stuff like that. But I think this was the first anime kind of collection of short stories based on like a Western popular culture IP or whatever. And to my mind, it's still the best. And the reason is The Matrix, firstly, is based on designs that come from Japan in the first place. So it kind of goes back the other way so seamlessly. But there's so much potential with just the pure, the core concept of The Matrix being a thing, that I think, you could make 1,000 shorts based on it, and they could all be interesting. And as I said, I think The Animatrix is maybe the best Matrix thing, which isn't the first Matrix film, if that makes sense. I think The Animatrix is better than any of the sequels. I think it's that good. I mentioned earlier as well, it's not a decade movie, it's a millennium movie, blah, blah, blah. The soundtrack and the score being generational as well. One of the things is, in this movie, they mentioned that 1999, it was the reason that The Matrix is in 1999 is because it's like the height of human society. And we all laughed a few years later, 1999, how quaint. You look back now, you're like, 1999 might have been the height of human civilization, because in 2001 in particular, things started to go wrong in terms of human rights, in terms of freedoms, all that jazz. You look back, suddenly 1999 looks fucking dope. And it's not just society, it's also cinema. If you look at the films that have come out like the last 5-6 years and you compare it to 1999, it's depressing as fuck. Beyond The Matrix, Fight Club, Sixth Sense, American Beauty, Magnolia, Toy Story 2, Being John Malkovich, The Iron Giant, Blair Witch, American Pie, Election, Talented Mr. Ripley, Galaxy Quest, and The Mummy all came out in 1999.
Good.
Wow. What a fucking year, man. Unbelievable.
I mean, it's
like, one of the best years.
Expensive as fuck, isn't it?
Oh, dude. It's up there, like, I think 84 or 87. Like, those are really good years as well. But 99, man, that rolls with just about anything. The aesthetic, as we mentioned, had this huge impact, and it's coming back around. I'm not sure if you mentioned that kids are starting to dress like we did when we were kids all of a sudden. It's like, you go into a lot of these shops and it's like, man, this all looks a lot like 2001. It's just got that kind of vibe.
I've been dressing the same since I was 15, dude. So
fair enough. We already mentioned the fact that I made Counting Rich and stuff like that, but one of the other things when I was younger, I'm not sure if it's the same for you guys, but this was the DVD. Like because we're old enough to remember when DVD was a new technology, and this was the DVD. Like if you wanted to show off, I've got a DVD player, or if I've got a sound system, you're like, I'm putting this on. I remember I went to a friend's house when I was in university. He got this big flat screen TV. And when I say flat screen, it was still pretty chunky. But he had a sound system, and the way he showed off was playing the hallway sequence. And I think it's that combination of visuals and sounds and all that jazz. It totally made sense.
I didn't show it off with that. It was a Keanu Reeves film for me, but it wasn't The Matrix.
What was that?
The Replacements.
The Replacements. I love The Replacements.
If I ever was to show like a DVD, this is what DVD is.
Why would you show? I love The Replacements, but what the fuck
love
did
The
you?
Replacements, and it was just always in my DVD player at that time. Early 2000s.
Yeah, but all the films to show off like new technology, like, oh, this is like cutting edge, used The Replacements, a film which could have just as easily been made in 1972.
I'm good. I'm good with that. The conversion looked fantastic.
Oh, fair enough. And we've already mentioned the whole trans allegory thing, which I think is pretty clear at this point, so I won't go into that again. In terms of make a change, this is going to be an easy one. This is the point of the podcast where we all pick, if you could change one thing in this movie, what would you change? Should we all just say it at the same fucking time? Mouse. Get rid of Mouse. That's the only thing I would change.
I as much as I hated him, I didn't think of that.
No.
The one thing I would have changed was when he's in the office and he's trying to escape the agents at the beginning. First of all, you wouldn't have a window that opens on a skyscraper like that, right?
Again, though, you say that. We're talking about now. This is 1999. People just the safety things just weren't the same. They were just like, who the fuck's going to jump out of a window? Or they were just like, if somebody really wants to kill themselves, they can jump off something. So it makes no difference.
Absolutely,
it was an era of slightly more common sense, dare I say?
All right, but that's not the thing I'd change. I would change how he gets caught by them. Just he's out there, he's cowering, and he just goes, oh no, just walks in and just gets himself out. Maybe have a little bit of fight in him, maybe try and actually get caught rather than just, no, I'm just giving up.
I like the fact that he gave up. The whole thing is like, they kind of play in like in the Matrix, he's still just a dude. And it's like all of a sudden you're getting, this is a movie and you're like, oh my God, he's like climbing out on the edge. But as soon as he looks over the edge, 99% of people would be like, fuck that. As soon as he dropped the phone, I'd be the same thing. I'm like, no, I'm going in. I'm going with the police. Fuck that noise. I thought that was brilliant, but I get where you're coming from.
For me, I'd add Will Smith. No,
the fact that the film makes you think about Will Smith is your least favorite thing about this film.
No, so what I would probably, and this is just for me, not make Cypher so obviously the bad guy. Maybe don't give him the evil mustache.
He doesn't need the goatee. He definitely doesn't need the bad guy.
Don't make him the guy. You're like, as soon as you see the dude, you're like, well, clearly you're fucked. Also, question: how you need to have somebody?
Question.
You need to have somebody follow you in the Matrix, like Tank or Dozer or whatever. How did they not know Cypher was evil? Like,
how did he get in there to make the deal?
So Keanu saw him as he was looking at the Matrix, saying, "I see blonde, brunette, blah blah blah. Do you want some toilet wine?" And then Keanu fucks off, and then the next scene is the steak scene. Who plugged him in, or who gives him an exit?
I don't know. That's good. That's a really good point. I do not have an answer to that at all.
That's why Tank didn't come back.
But let's be clear, the correct answer is still fucking Mouse.
Mouse.
Make no mistake.
Yeah, you're probably right.
Yeah. It's always a bit of a shame, but I get what you mean with Cypher, because they actually set up the whole mole thing in the very first thing you hear.
Yeah, it doesn't matter because the mole is real.
Yeah, the mole is real and all that jazz. But as soon as you see him, you're like, that's the mole. That's clearly the fucking mole. I mean, he looks like a mole, but just an evil mole. Like, that's his look. It's ridiculous. In terms of video games, there was a whole bunch, including a relatively successful MMO, but none, I don't think, ever quite captured the essence of the movies. The closest to it is obviously the Max Payne games, with its, everyone thinks, oh, it's Max Payne because of its brilliant bullet time combat, but it also has a noir setting. The only thing it's missing is the sci-fi element. So in terms of if I was going to do a modern day Matrix game, the obvious answer is the Max Payne 3 developers. Only thing is, Max Payne 3 is now, or the Max Payne IP is owned by Rockstar. Now, I don't want Rockstar making it as good as Max Payne 3 was. I'd want it to go back to the original developer, Remedy, who made the equally brilliant, I'm not sure if you guys have played Control. That's also got an element of bullet time, but it's got the sci-fi trappings and stuff. And they make Alan Wake, which is one of my favorite games of all time. So the easiest answer for me is make a big budget Matrix game, which I still think there is a market for today. Get fucking Remedy to it, man. I think Remedy would make an unbelievable Matrix game. Not connected to the movies, just a Matrix in 2023. What that, the whole Star Wars thing. We've had the Keanu story, we've had the Carrie-Anne Moss Trinity story. Just do a separate story inside the Matrix, but set in 2023. I'd love that, but hey, we'll see. No, we won't see. It's not going to happen, but it'd be great for you.
And I guess you're out of this section.
Yeah,
I thought so.
No, fair enough.
I mean, I'm with you. I pretty much wrote it down the same in regards to it'll be Max Payne, but I'd like to see it Alan Wake style. Because I just recently found Alan Wake.
Oh, Alan Wake 2 looks so.
It came out on Xbox,
good.
and I'm not an Xbox guy, so I've just found it now. It's back on PlayStation, and I think it's great.
Alan
Wake,
I
mean, basically, Alan Wake
captured and been held by Arabs in the desert somewhere, and they're trying to get money out of it. What the hell is that?
So
Alan Wake is basically a Stephen King novel, but in video game form.
Yeah, he's a novelist who's going to like a sleepy town because he's got writer's block, but things happen to him that he could be dreaming, he could not be dreaming, it could be a shit like it's quite.
But
good.
It's got great combat and stuff like that. But like I said, Remedy also made the Max Payne games, which are very, very Matrixy, for lack of a better term. But yeah, they are absolutely the obvious answer here. So that takes us to scores and recommendations. I'll just get through mine because we all know how this is going. It's 5 stars. I think this film is legitimately a masterpiece, and I would recommend it to anyone to this day. Like if you hadn't somehow, because I think this really is one of those films. I feel like everyone I know has seen this film, but if you hadn't seen it, I would say, dude, you've got to go back and watch the fucking Matrix. I wouldn't say you have to watch all of them because faults are plenty in the sequels, but the first film is pretty close to a perfect film, and I think one of the best sci-fi and action movies of the last 25 years.
Nice. Dave, 4 stars?
No, it's 5-star for me as well.
Nice.
No films have this much of an impact on me, especially from the cinema, fresh out the box, and it's just amazing. It looks brilliant. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes ish. Something like that. Yeah. It didn't feel like that when I was watching it.
No, it flies by.
I had to pause it halfway through to go and get a drink, and I was like, "My God, an hour's gone already," and I just hadn't noticed. So it flies by.
I think, like I said, it comes back to that like last 40 minutes thing. Like just as you think this film might get too plotty, it just abandons it and just goes, "All right, this is just going to be a fucking non-stop action film." So the last 30, 40 minutes just disappear in the blink of an eye because it's just relentless. So I think it makes the whole film feel shorter by association, I suppose.
And I would recommend this to everyone, and I've been recommending it to my wife, as I said so many times.
Give up. It's been 24 years, dude.
I mean, she fell asleep halfway through, woke up at the end, looked at me and went, "It's still meh."
Oh,
so, it's not for everyone.
Dude,
it's not for everyone.
3 p.m. and she'd fall asleep.
Fair enough.
So,
Rob?
5 stars, 5 stars. What are we doing next week then? No. To be fair, I wanted to really, really give this the all, and it's 3.5 for me. Like there's things on here that didn't work for me, but there's a lot that did. I don't think, in my personal opinion, it's the greatest, but I enjoyed the rewatch more than I enjoyed the initial watch. So it was good to go back to, and
I wonder again if
it might be a 4 star.
It might go up to 4.5. Yeah,
yeah. I wonder though, like how much of it is because we've mentioned it a couple of times. The fact that it became so infinitely uncool for a while is like the difference between watching it in 1999 and it having that impact, and then obviously going back to it. You watch it in a completely different way. I can imagine I don't know when you watched it, but like you said, you didn't see it in the cinema. If you came to it later, it just wouldn't be the same film because one, you would already know, quote unquote, what the Matrix is. None of it's going to come as a surprise. It's not going to have the same visual impact. So I wonder if I'd say watch the Matrix for the first time in say 2002 or something. 2007, for instance. Would I feel the same way about it? I still think it's fundamentally a brilliant film, whichever way you look at it. But would I still have that kind of 5-star attachment? I don't know.
Yeah. So it's 3.5. But I would recommend it, to be fair, because there's a lot to like about this film. So
absolutely.
I would, and it's got such an interesting premise that again has been spoofed, but this was the original one. So in regards to that, yes, I would definitely recommend it. But it's a 3.5. But I enjoyed my rewatch. And I had a good time with it, so I can't.
One last question, Aim, because you mentioned the fact that obviously it's got such great premise and stuff like that. And obviously we saw what happened with Matrix Resurrections is when a filmmaker who doesn't want to make a sequel is forced to make a sequel so that they don't lose the keys to the castle. That's basically what happened. It was like, either you make a sequel or we're making a sequel without you. Would you want to see somebody else make a Matrix film? Because the answer to me is 100% yes. Sadly.
Well, we kind of saw that though, didn't we? It was called Equilibrium.
But Equilibrium's just not in the same league. It's just It's pretty
I
bad.
think you've got.
I would love to see
stop making the same thing. Because
no, that is the point. Though I would love to see someone
capture that first one again. So it's never going to be as good as that film. So what's the point? And it's the same with all the Terminator and all the Predator films. They're never going to be as good. So stop making the same story.
And that's why I love. There's different fields of thought and there's different arguments to a lot of these. I love the fact that like you get Back to the Future. Robert Zemeckis says you're not making another one. You're not making a remake. You're not making a sequel until I die. It's not happening because Back to the Future to me was perfect, and I agree with him. Back to the Future is great. I don't want to see another reversion of that. The Last Starfighter. I'd love to see a modern version of The Last Starfighter.
Yep.
But he won't give it up. The director, like, you ain't fucking touching this until I die. So you don't get. So you get things like Seth Rogen did that TV show Future Man, which was The Last Starfighter, because he wants to do a Last Starfighter, but they won't do it. When it comes to The Matrix, I think, but this is more for me because I didn't give it a 5-star or anything. I think it'd be interesting to see somebody else take it on now.
But it'd have to be. I think I'd only be interested if it was like I'm not desperate to see another Matrix film.
If you say James Cameron, I will fucking leave.
No. I wouldn't want I don't want to see Nolan. I'm trying to think who would be the perfect director. Would we love to see like a Denis Villeneuve take on the Matrix, like a slightly more arty kind of.
Is that the guy that did Dune?
Yeah. Like he's a fantastic director. Or Gareth Edwards. He's obviously fantastic at sci-fi. Maybe give him a shot. But I would only be interested if it was somebody taking the concept but doing something completely different with it.
See,
which in fairness is what Lana Wachowski was trying to do with the fourth film, and it didn't quite work. But
I kind of want to see an unknown, as long as they had the right premise for it, to see what they could do with it. But I think it needs to be someone with a lot of talent, though. I don't want to see I think they need to get the right people involved in terms of cinematography, right people involved in terms of certainly action choreography, but you've got to push the back. That's the whole point with this film, is you've got to do something completely new. I just don't think you're going to, I agree with Dave on the point of, I said I'd like to see something. I just don't think you're going to replicate.
No, I don't think so. I've talked myself out of it.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's move on then. So no Matrix sequels, thank you. Let's just leave it with the original. So next week, sir, it is your choice.
Yeah, so we're actually we've been doing this now. We're coming up to 3 years doing this. This is our 3rd October. So we've actually we do what we call a Halloween season, and for some reason, I've decided this year that we're naming our Halloween season. So I thought I'd explain it, because if we just come out and just say what we're doing next week, people will get a bit confused. So when I edit our episodes, I usually abbreviate the name of Hey You Guys to Hug. So I will say Hug Matrix or Hug True Lies or anything like that, which makes no sense because it's Hey You Guys, but hey, it's Hug. So we've decided we're going to actually do our Halloween season. We're going to call it our Hugtober.
Yeah, it makes no sense. And he says we. I mean, it's the royal we. I'm not sure if that really counts.
Although, to be fair, do not drag me under the bus. I said, should we name it Hugtober? You came back with absolutely.
No, I am joking. I do actually quite like it. It is one of those, if you stop and think about it, it doesn't actually make any sense, because you're Hugtober.
It's hands across America, isn't it?
Yeah, that's exactly what it sounds like, hands across America. But I just like it. So yeah, we're doing a Halloween season. So how many films are we actually doing for Halloween season?
It's actually 5, because our last episode will actually release on Halloween. But
yeah, because usually we do 3, so we've jumped from 3 to 5.
Spoiler alert, it won't be Halloween. But
no, fair enough.
So to start off October, it's me starting it off, and it can be classed as horror, but it could also be classed as fantasy, or I guess comedy. But I've wanted to do it for ages, so I'm kind of sneaking it in. We're going to do Frighteners.
It is a horror. It's a horror comedy for sure, and I absolutely adore this film. I'm a little concerned about the idea of going back to it, because I loved it so much. What is it? Is it a 96 film?
No, do you know what?
98?
It might be 99. Ooh,
it might be 99.
99. I'll check it out.
99. Oh yeah, no, it would have been later 90s, because this is it was the technology used in that film that ostensibly got Peter Jackson.
Oh, fucking hell, you were right. It's 96. Sorry, bud.
No, it's fine. But I think it was still this film when they saw the special effects used, which were cutting edge at the time, especially for a lower budget movie.
Yeah,
they're like, oh, we think you might be the guy for Lord of the Rings, because a lot of people are like, wait, Peter Jackson? Who the fuck's Peter Jackson? This New Zealand filmmaker who made Bad Taste 10, 15 years earlier.
Bad Taste and Brain Dead.
Yeah, I mean, they're great films, but nobody knew about them. But it was very much Frighteners, which got
Look
in
at
the
the
wrong
Dave
name.
Space. He still doesn't know about them.
And there's a good reason, because, I mean, Frighteners is very much a cult movie, but those who've seen it tend to love it, and there is a good reason for that. I mean, I remember it being a fantastic movie. I suspect it'll still be a fantastic movie, but I haven't seen this film for over a decade now.
No,
so I think this is a great way to start.
So I'm looking forward to it, and it's classic Michael J. Fox.
Oh, he's awesome in it. He's awesome.
He's great.
Everyone's great in this film. I can't wait to do that. So yeah, so this has been The Matrix, and we're going to do the start of our Hugtober season of 5 Halloween movies. I don't even know what the other ones are going to be yet, but it's a strong start with Frighteners. So is there anything else we want to mention before we wrap up?
No, I'm all good. As always, thanks for joining us, Dave.
Thank you for having me.
No worries at all. We'll decide what film you want to bully your way onto next time, and we'll
it won't be long until Dave's back on the podcast.
Oh, no, you're gonna join us for our Christmas episode, aren't you? So as always.
Oh yeah, so he'll be back at Christmas. But for now, I've been Liam, this has been Rob, that's been Dave, and you've been listening to the Hey You Guys podcast. Cheers, guys, and bye-bye.
Cheers, guys.
Cheers.
Oh, and before I forget, where can folk reach us if they were so inclined to?
Well, you can actually reach us on Hey You Guys 80s at Facebook, Instagram, and on Twitter. But if you want to send us a mail, do heyyouguys80s@gmail.com. Send us in your recommendations. Send us in your thoughts about any of the episodes. Just literally talk to us. We'll have a one-sided talk with you on the podcast.
Yeah. We're nice folk. Get in touch. But no, cheers, guys. Bye-bye.
Cheers, guys. Bye now.
Hey, you guys!